All right, we're live. That was weird. It was taking forever to load. I don't know why. Anyway, we're back. We're back. Episode 5 of this little Strider story stream, and I've bought a hoodie for the occasion. Actually, I bought it anyway, but I just because I wanted it. Got KK of Animal Crossing. If I can move my microphone a bit. Yep, and it was actually on sale in Nintendo Store. The first time a Nintendo sale has ever actually gone well for me, because they don't have sales. And yeah, the only size I had was large, so that was interesting. Today I have some interesting things to talk about, and I know the new pope is in the title. I really don't have whole lot to say about that. I don't really know who he is. I do know that he's the first American. Kind of crazy. That's kind of pretty. It's kind of cool in a way. I'll start off just talking about that. Yeah, so it's kind of cool having the first American pope in history. Kind of interesting. And I think that there's the onset of a new pope is always interesting to me. I'm not Catholic by any stretch, but I do acknowledge that the pope definitely sets the tone for how the church is going to function or operate, what they embrace or what they don't embrace. Now, granted, each diocese can raise a middle finger to the pope if they goes against canon teaching. And but I think it's every pope that comes along, it will define a new generation of Catholics, new generation of churchgoers. And in a way, even in our very secularized society in the Western world, I mean, more and more young people, especially the generations coming after me, Gen Zers, I think it's Gen Zers, apparently they are growing more and more, they're going more and more orthodox. They're turning to more traditional expressions of faith than they have probably than any other generation, either before or after them. Probably after them, actually, because when you live in an incredibly secularized society with absolutely no function, with no logical, no function in society, where you're just kind of expected to exist, and especially young people, they need a lot of focus. They need a lot of, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. They need a lot of direction. And today's modern secularized society does not allow them that, especially all this libertarian BS. You can choose whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. Well, I mean, you got to start somewhere. You got to start knowing your identity somehow. And I think a new pope is going to define how a lot of new and upcoming Catholics are going to start living out their lives. And Catholics do make up a sizable majority in this country, and really in the world at large. And I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. We'll see how this plays out. Apparently, he does have typical liberal bents, which should not really be surprising considering he's a boomer. Born in 1955, I believe. Kind of a boomer, but Chicagoan, from Chicago, but raised in the Augustinian tradition. And he's been a part of that for pretty much his entire life in the church. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And hopefully that the Augustinian tradition, which is you kind of follow the same the tradition of Saint Augustine of Hippo, and I'm okay with that. I'm completely okay with that. I studied Saint Augustine quite a bit when I was in high school, and I enjoyed a lot of his writing. I don't remember a whole lot, but I do remember it resonating quite a bit with me. So we'll see how this goes. And I think it's important that we at least take notice of these very historic events that we are living through. I think every generation before and after us will always lived through historic events, but this is kind of a big deal, have an American be the Pope for the first time ever. So next I wanted to celebrate actually the success, I'm underselling it a bit, the rousing success of Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Good Lord. Say that 10 times fast. Give me just a second. Beg pardon, the pollen is killing me. It's been raining like crazy. Everything's been getting greener outside. It's wonderful, but the wind's also kicking up like crazy. So I'm still like struggling a little bit. So Dexerto released an interesting article on May 4th. So let's take a look at that. It's going to be kind of interesting. Now this one I haven't read before, so I got to go in blind. So Claire Obscure Expedition 33's origin story is even more insane than you'd think by Carver Fisher. So Expedition 33's director Guillaume Broche. I did study French for a little bit. So Guillaume Broche revealed in an interview with the BBC that he decided to leave Ubisoft and create a Game of the Year contender purely because he was bored working at Ubisoft and wanting to try something new, which is hilarious because it's exactly what he did. I mean, what was Ubisoft's big release this year? Assassin's Creed George Floyd, and here this teeny tiny little indie developer, this little upstart pissant is now going to completely dethrone, completely do away with his former employer's dreams. I love it. Though Expedition 33 selling over 1 million copies after being made by a core team of around 30 people, by the way, is enough of a story to make its dev cycle stand out from standard AAA game development. Yeah, no crap. Tales of the game's origins make that story even harder to believe. Game director Broche and writer Jennifer Svedberg. See, why can't you have a name like that? Svedberg both spoke with the BBC about the topic, revealing that the process of getting the team together was even more unlikely than people initially realized. Before they secured funding for the project, Broche was securing dev talent and making a pitch deck by putting out posts on Reddit and putting a team together through online forums. Svedberg had never even voice acted in a game before. She just thought it sounded like a fun idea and decided to submit a voice demo and throw her hat in the ring. I was like, I've never done that. It sounds kind of cool. So I sent him an audition, she explained. One thing led to another, and she ended up becoming the lead writer of a story that is, in large part, praised because of how strong its core narrative is. And no Sweet Baby Inc. Black Girl Gamer hit detection anywhere near this. Why do you think it's so good? Because those race-baiting grifters are nowhere near it. Lorien, awesome name. I love that name, Lorien. Testar, the Expedition 33's composer, got recruited by Broche thanks to interactions with SoundCloud comments. The director attributed his unnatural penchant for recruitment to massive luck, paired with people being in lockdown at the time and wanting some new creative outlets. Yeah, kind of cool. Regardless, many of the people working on the title either had no experience working in game development at all or had very little. The team was made almost solely of junior members. We have, I think, an amazing team, mostly of junior people, but they are so incredibly invested in the project and talented, said director Guillaume. Somehow it worked, which still makes no sense to me after all these years. I kind of love that. He's like, we are amazing, but I still have no idea how this happened. When Guillaume Broche founded Sandfall and made a site, he started with a simple blog post. Well, we don't have much to share now other than what we shared on the main page. It's the very beginning, But rest assured, this blog will be oh so amazing soon. Stay tuned. Almost 5 years later, it turns out he was right. While Claire Obscura Expedition 33 would have been a massive feat regardless of how big the development team was, false, by the way, false. It's only able to succeed because of the small team. The accomplishments of the team are made even more impressive considering the unlikely origins of what may become 2025's Game of the Year. And that's it. So here's the thing. This game would not have been such a massive success if it had been made with more than 30 people. You know why? Because of how profit works. Because if you have had 100, 200, 300 people working on this game, you had to pay all those people. You had to make all that money back. And so the game's budget would have ballooned to an absurd proportion. But look at this group of people. And I know the race baiting grifters like a Black Girl Gamer or Sweet Baby Inc. would look at these people, presumably all from France or within at least some kind of French connection. French connection. The race baiting grifters at Sweet Baby Inc. would look here and say, there's not enough diversity. Which, if you're not a piece of crap, if you're not a race baiting piece of garbage, and you actually look at people for who they are, you can see there's a lot of different types of people here. And that's pretty cool. And some of them with very little experience in game development, but they just made a banger. They just made an absolute hit, a contender for Game of the Year. And you know the Ubisoft devs are seething. But look how small this team is. 30 people. And you have some of them being like voice actors in the game, because that's how game development used to be. It was just a bunch of crackheads and drunks in a closet or in a garage saying, "Dude, let's make a video game, man." How do you think Doom got started? How do you think Quake got started? How do you think any of these games got started? How do you think Mario got started? All of these games started out as an idea somewhere. And I'm just looking at these people, like, they seem like fun people, but they don't know what they're doing. They're not industry experts. They don't command a high price tag. They're just people with a passion. They're just people who believed in this game, believed in this company, decided to put their heads down and put their noses to the grindstone and learn what they needed to do in order to make it good. And they did it. Everybody is playing this game. Everybody's playing this game. And I'm waiting. Now I have a policy. I wait maybe about 3 or 4 months after a new game comes out in order to make sure all the updates come out and make sure all the bugs are solved. But it sounds like, but I haven't seen any reports of like any game-breaking bugs, any absurdly huge update, attached to it, day one update. And it's just, this is how game development used to be. Just a bunch of yahoos getting together with a vision and working together to make it happen. Until the AAA machine came down and decided, no, actually, you need to spend the GDP of a small country in order to make a game, in order to barely make back the budget. I mean, guys, again, I don't want to keep bringing them up but they are still relevant. But these narrative consultants, these localization consultants, basically, if you have someone approaching you that says they are a consultant for game developers, kick them to the curb, preferably physically, because those people are there to only stick their noses where it doesn't belong, to stick their fingers into the pies into this pie and to try to make it theirs, not yours. If you are an amateur game developer, never ever trust the consultants. Never trust people like Sweet Baby Inc., Hit Detection, or in Black Girl Gamer. This is the three that I can come up with at the top of my head. But there's probably about half a dozen more out there. Do not trust them, because you do not need them. Their presence in your game will balloon the budget like crazy, because not only will they come with a laundry list of problematic things that you have to abide by, you have to spend the money in order to change it. And that's going to ramp up your budget. That's going to delay production. I mean, this game took 5 years, but apparently it's one of the more beautiful games out there. And it's simple turn-based design, for God's sake. Like, when's the last time I had a proper turn-based game that wasn't like a Final Fantasy game? It's a hit. It's a huge hit. But guys, the success of Godzilla -1 in Hollywood a couple years ago should tell you don't need the big machine to make your dream come to life. You don't need them. Do not let them bully you. Do not let them twist your arm. Do not let them browbeat you. Do not let them hold a gun to your head and tell you that you need them in order to make your game work. You don't. They are predatory pieces of garbage. This studio is gonna be the next Ubisoft, as Ubisoft apparently has been sold to Tencent. It's interesting that if they were so successful, if they were doing so well, they wouldn't need to sell their company. Now, would they? But they needed the numbers for Assassin's Creed Shadow, Assassin's Creed George Floyd, in order to evaluate the company properly. And a game like Expedition 33, which honestly, seriously, the next title, for God's sake, make it more. I don't understand clay obscure. I mean, you're probably not making it for people like me, but still, I want to play this game because apparently the story is really good, the graphics are really good, the gameplay is excellent. I'm in. I would happily pay Full price for a game like this that was made by an indie developer, where all that money I know is going back to the developers, not to some grifting, race baiting piece of garbage in Canada who's trying to hold a gun to your head and make you think that you need them. You don't. All right. Enough about Clair Obscure Expedition 33 with a side of surrender and white flags and... Okay, enough French jokes. Okay, so this is something a little bit more ridiculous. Now, this is basically a glorified blog post from Kotaku, which I cannot... this one I had to read before. This is not a blind reaction, unfortunately. This one I did have to read because it's just so stupid. This is from Kotaku because of course it is. Now, when I say John Walker did nothing wrong, I do not mean this prick. I mean the actual real John Walker, the real Captain America, John Walker from Marvel US Agent. That's my John Walker, who did nothing wrong. This guy did everything wrong. Let's read whatever he has to say. Could we be about to, and what a weird title. Could we be about to enter skippable boss fight utopia? Again, weird way to structure that sentence. South of Midnight has shown it's possible without destroying the very fabric of the universe. Yeah, buddy, you're quoting South of Midnight as an example of your point. That's not really helping. Now, this article just reads like a sarcastic blog post by a guy who is used to sniffing his own farts. And from Kotaku, that's exactly the kind of person that they'd hire. In a gaming world increasingly built out of Souls-likes, where the concept of the boss battle becomes the central game mechanic, some of us have been left behind. Get good, scrub. I have always hated boss fights, and while I have no interest in convincing anyone else to agree with me, I have long lamented the lack of accommodation made for the many other people who are already with me. Yeah, all two of them. Weakling. But sniff the air, something's changing. Citing a game that something's changing, really? Something that nobody's played, nobody gave a crap about, and also saw the Sweet Baby ink stink all over it and ran for the hills? Piss off. I recently loaded South of Midnight, interested to check out such a gorgeous-looking game. Pfft. That's a joke. And was immediately delighted by the art and the extraordinary performances in the cutscenes. But then, as Zach warned us, what is he? I don't know. I was immediately underwhelmed by the repetitive combat. However, while idly... Okay, so wait a minute. So you're telling me it's repetitive combat, but you don't like boss fights? So you're wanting an actual gameplay combat experience. You're willing to, whinge and moan about it not being up to your standards, about not being what you thought it was. But the whole point of a boss fight is to prove your mastery of those mechanics. So what's the point of combat if you don't want the ultimate culmination of those skills? Idiot. However, while idly fiddling through the game setting to see what was what, I saw a toggle I absolutely was not expecting. Boss skip option. And this is where it gets stupid. In 2017, I wrote one of the most controversial articles of my career. A piece for which I received literal death threats. No, some blank profile that you invented to send you an Instagram DM does not count as a death threat, you moron. Alongside hundreds of more banal insults and wishes for my imminent demise. Well, yeah, when you attack, because no doubt in that article, it's couched with absolute condescending behavior towards gamers, because that's how these people work. Kotaku has not been about gamers for a long time. As someone battle-hardened by Gamergate, no, you pricks ran for the hills and ran to the UN and whinged and moaned to Anita Sarkeesian and made her fight your battle for you. But you lost, because nobody trusts sites like Kotaku anymore for reasons like this. They've not been about games for a long time. It takes quite a bit for the scale of a backlash to take me by surprise, and while I knew it would piss some people off, I didn't predict the volume. I wrote an article suggesting that boss fights should be skippable. Imagine my temerity. Yeah, because you're an idiot. There's so many games I'd never seen the end of, but for YouTube, I suppose, because I just wasn't physically capable of completing the later bosses. No, because you are incapable of it, not physically capable. It makes him sound like it's not his fault. Prick, we all know you're not good enough to do it. We all know you have no interest in it because, again, you are not a gamer. And this is great. I've never finished a Metroid Prime game, for instance, despite it being one of my all-time favorite gaming series. Well, it can't be then, because you haven't finished it. I read that, almost choked on my water, because Good God! Like Metroid Prime is like it's like baby's first person shooter. It was an easy game. It was fun. I love the Metroid Prime series, but come on, dude, you're just terrible at your job. This is all like it's someone else's fault. You're just terrible at your job, and you're trying to push the blame off to somebody else. Let's not be coy here. There are other games I've been enjoying so much, yeah, just not the boss fight, but just had to abandon because every so often there would be a difficulty spike of such enormous disproportion that eventually I'd lose all will to try. Yeah, Mario must be a real challenge for you. And to be abundantly clear, this isn't just about my incompetence. So he admits there's incompetence here. But so none of the previous paragraph was even worth it. There are obviously a billion boss fights I've successfully completed, but sure, pal. Sure, you couldn't even complete Metroid Prime? Bull crap. Try not to curse here. For me and millions of others, they are the mostly tedious obstacles that get in the way of enjoying the rest of the game. Yeah, no, not millions of others. Millions of others are able to finish our game while you sit in the corner seething and coping because you're incapable of actually indulging properly in the hobby that you're writing about. So it struck me, why not just let me skip past them? Who loses out? Well, the people who have to program that function in for you, coward. Well, it turns out the answer to that question in 2017 was very angry people. For reasons never quite comprehensively elucidated, my being able to carry on playing a game I like without finishing a specific fight causes them great personal injury. To skip over a boss is, I was told, both a moral and physical affront. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're demanding a game cohere to you and not the other way around. And the addition of such an option would very likely destroy video games as not all of society. Okay, now you're just being a pretentious, sarcastic prick. This doesn't go well for a journalist. But then again, it's exactly what journalists would do. And yet, in the months since South of Midnight released, I have yet to witness the collapse of humanity. Okay. In fact, I've heard only very few people talking about it. Yeah, because no one's talking about the game. No one's talking about that game. It came and went like a fart in church. Shut up. This is not the very first time a game has offered a way through tough spots. A fair few big name games have had options to let you skip entire missions should you fail them enough. Yeah, they'll make fun of you for it. Red Dead Redemption 2 and Days Gone, for instance, while many others will offer to lower the difficulty if you're flailing. Yes, and roast you for it. But it's still vanishingly rare, and South of Midnight is the only instance of specifically being able to skip the bosses that I'm aware of. Let me know of other examples. And it harms no one, not even that guy, you know. And he invents a straw man because that's what these people do. He could have quoted any of the banal comments or the literal death threats, but no, he has to invent a straw man in order to rail against because, again, that's what Kotaku does. They think of gamers as just these neck-bearded idiots in mom's basement trolling Reddit and saying, "Mom, I need more Hot Pockets." Ugh. Where's it going? Talking about Dave. Yeah, the one who still unironically says good. Yeah, that's me, dick. It just lets more people play more games the way they want to. No. A company, a studio is not inclined to make their game the way you want it to. They have to market it to gamers. Gamers like the challenge. Real gamers like to play a game all the way through. So I will admit, guys, there are some games that I just stopped playing. For whatever reason or another, I just stopped playing because I just got bored. But that wasn't because I thought it was too hard, because I'm not a coward. You'd find them in the next edition of your favorite gaming magazine. Oh, wait. But you know what? It used to be commonplace. It was incredibly rare that a game didn't ship with a suite of hidden cheat codes. Yeah, I remember that. You'd never know that. He couldn't even finish Metroid. You find them in the next edition of your favorite gaming magazine, then type them in to become invincible or have infinite ammo, and then blitz through the boss that was troubling you. Yeah, but that wasn't widely known. Not everybody had access to the internet or access to those gaming magazines. So we have the internet now. We can find a way through any boss and through any sequence in a video game now, thanks to the internet. Then type them in to become invincible, have infinite ammo, and then blitz through the boss that was troubling you. And yet the schools remained open, the supermarket still had toilet paper on sale, everything was still okay. Piss off. I hate this pedantic nonsense. If anything, not being able to cheat past an impossible boss is the crime against nature. No, buddy. No. This is how people say healthcare is a human right. I'm fairly certain this has appeared in South of Midnight as a consideration for accessibility. There it goes. There is the social justice talking point that we're all going to hide behind and pretend we're oh so virtuous for calling people like me a degenerate piece of garbage. That's wonderful. If it's worth noting that the game even lets you skip combat, although given how dull it is, this seems to fix another issue entirely. Make up your mind. Do you want combat? Do you want the challenge? Do you want gameplay or don't you? A boss fight is part of it, whether you like it or not. And also, if your game lets you skip combat, what's the point of playing the game? It's just a walking simulator at that point. Why bother? You might as well play Final Fantasy 13 or Final Fantasy 10. Yes, I said it. In the past few years, we've seen a dramatic change in how AAA games are being made. Yeah, terribly. With the needs of players put front and center. No, they're going to the lowest common denominator. They're going to the stupidest journalists. They're just making a game, every game on game journalist mode and calling it good. Few big name games launch these days without offering a wealth of incredibly specific options, allowing people to tailor games to their specific requirements. I mean, a difficulty level and button mapping it's not all that hard to do. Which is all well and good until you reach a difficulty spike boss fight in which all such amenities seem to get thrown out of the window. Okay, name more than Metroid freaking Prime. Oi, you be good enough at this bit no matter your specific situation or you're done playing. And yeah, you have to proceed. You have to progress. You have to keep going beyond what you thought. Beyond what you thought you knew. Because that's what gaming does. But could South of Midnight be the start of a trend? And no, Dave, I don't mean okay. Shut up. I'm not addressing your. No, this whole paragraph is stupid because he's just going after his straw man. It's an impossible thing to believe in because we're never allowed nice things. Yeah, because of you. You're the ones that don't allow us to have nice things. Gaming was fine before people like you strolled along that came on the scene. The gatekeeping around the topic is about as fierce as anything gets in this hobby. So many days horrified that others might enjoy a part of a game for which they have not demonstrated their worth. Yes, that's what's called a masculine need to make you prove yourself. And I don't think this guy would have any idea what that was like. But I still allow myself a glimmer to stare through the crack of South of Midnight has offered the beautiful sunlit fields being. God, dude, do you need another squirt of lube when you're jerking yourself off? This guy thinks he is so clever. He thinks he is such a good writer. Just out of curiosity, what else has he done? Best games of 2025 so far. That's fun. Did you play them all? Did you complete them all? Doubtful. And just I did not mean to do that. That was the wrong button. Still getting used to this new format. But this is why you gatekeep your hobbies. This is why you gatekeep your hobbies. You don't let people in who have absolutely no interest in your hobby. This is why you never let people in who want to come in and fundamentally change it. Because they always fundamentally change it for the worst. They turn it into something that it never was. I mean, look at Tolkien, look at Marvel, look at Wizards of the Coast, look at D&D, look at BattleTech, look at Star Wars. Everything that these activists touch, everything that these weak pieces of garbage, these feminized idiots touches, just turns to crap because it ceases to appeal to fans anymore. It ceases to appeal to anyone except for them, and they always change it. They always change it, not when what will honor the fans, but will suit their personal beefs, their personal needs. And what their personal needs as a newbie, as someone who has never proven themselves, with their personal needs always come in contact with are the established player base, the established fans. We are the ones that always get shafted because our hobby changes around us to no longer want us a part of it. It always happens. You can allow people to enter in with a little bit of caution, and you should, but you should never ever let these people welcome these people in with open arms. You have to make them prove themselves. Yeah. All right. What's your favorite? Yeah, Star Wars. Okay. Prequel trilogy, original trilogy. If they say sequels, then piss off. Go away. Or Magic the Gathering. Are you what? and Wizards of the Coast. There's got to be something there that means that you've got that we have to use in order to prove that you can hang or not. Can you hang around with us or not? And I think you got to prove yourself. You got to prove yourself in fandom. You have to. Otherwise, there is no fandom anymore. After those people have come in, changed the property so unrecognizably, and then booted all the old fans, and then the property just dies. Look what Star Wars is doing. Look how Star Wars is doing right now. We have Andor season 2. That's an excellent show. Andor overall is an excellent show. Not perfect, but it's great. It's very well written. It's excellent. This is what I was dreaming of when I was as an expanded universe Star Wars fan, which is the only Star Wars canon, by the way. This is what I've been dreaming of for ages. But Tony Gilroy finally gave it to me. But look at the previous 10 years of Star Wars. It's been terrible. It's been terrible. The only redeeming part about it has been the Bad Batch, the end of the Clone Wars series, and now Andor. That's it. That's the only thing that's good in Rogue One, I guess. But I mean, Andor, Rogue One, they're all kind of the same. They're all kind of the same property. But I'm watching previous Star Wars fans just slaver all over it. Like, well, I think I heard someone say, well, I liked Ahsoka. I think someone near me was like, yeah, I liked Ahsoka. Why? I wanted to ask him why. But, I decided not to kick that hornet's nest because I'm like, guys, I used to eat, sleep, live, and breathe for Star Wars releases. And whenever the prequels came out, I tried to collect as many of the Legos as I possibly could. And it was a fun time to be a Star Wars fan. And it's still good to be a Star Wars fan. You just can't touch anything that Disney's made, except for Andor. But Andor doesn't appeal to the Boba Fett fans. Doesn't appeal to the Ahsoka fans. Doesn't appeal to the, I would even say Bad Batch fans. Something like Andor that's actually intelligently written that basically is the kind of thing we'd find in a Star Wars novel with Luke Skywalker or Han Solo or Coran Horn or like Wedge Antilles and I'm talking all the old stuff, Kip Duran, like all the old expanded universe stuff. Those are the kind of things that we would find. This is the kind of story that we would find them participating in. But thanks to the brain dead Disney fans, we don't have that anymore. This is why in people like John Walker or Kotaku and pretty much people at Polygon, PC Gamer, Comic Book Resource, they come into your hobbies, they call you a bigot for saying go away, and then they take it over and turn it into something that it never was, and turning it into something that it never will, that can't sustain itself because the fans are gone. And gaming, unfortunately, has been a huge part of it. Gaming has been a gigantic part of the culture war because it was the first to be infiltrated and it's the last thing that they're leaving. And it's also, they're hanging on to it for dear life because gaming is a huge battlefield for the culture war because gaming rakes in more money than Hollywood. So I think that's certainly something to consider whenever all of this goes away, because it will go away. It will all fade away. This is a fad that will play itself out, and then all that will be left will be us normal people who just participate in these hobbies because we like it. And eventually it'll all go away, but next time this crap comes around, we need to make sure we gatekeep the hell out of every single one of our hobbies because these people do not belong in it. And they destroy everything that they touch. The reason that games are crap now is specifically, and I'll end with this. The reason that games are so crap now is because everything is a push for diversity, equity, and inclusion. For instance, there is a reason that The Witcher 4 is not going to be on the Red engine anymore. That was an engine specifically made by CD Projekt Red to run their games. The Witcher 4 is going to be run on Unreal. Now, why does that matter? Because none of the original designers of the Witcher games, the ones that made them the huge success, they're not there anymore. They're not the company anymore. And who are they hiring? Just freshly graduated idiots who spent maybe $70 to buy an Unreal Engine and just messed around with it a little bit and BS their way into CD Projekt Red's offices. Excuse me. And I guarantee you, there's a reason that so many games are run in Unreal, and there's a reason they all look like crap, because they're all programmed by people with just generic coding experience. They have no idea what they're doing. They have no creative vision. And also they're being told what to do. They're being micromanaged by people like Sweet Baby Inc., Hit Detection, and Black Girl Gamer. They are being told what to do. They're being told to make the woman's character's jaws as big as possible. Looks like they got stung by a bee. Also, go down to the chest. Also looks like they've been stung by a bee. The women don't look like women. They look like adolescent boys. The men don't look like men anymore. They look like adolescent boys. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. I'm kind of wondering that may or may not be a little bit weird. But they're making games for themselves. They're not making games for fans. They're not making games for normal people who just want to look at something attractive and play as somebody attractive and be able to lose ourselves in a game for a little bit and not be reminded of the current era of pop culture that we find ourselves in. All right, enough of that. We'll grab some water, and then we are going to continue with To the Last Man. So we just finished up the section with almost said Baron von Ruthless. That's kind of funny. It's Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron. He took his first flight. So we are now about to read the next bit from another pilot named Raoul Lufberry. He is if we may remember, he is an American-born pilot who joined the French Foreign Legion for the war. And this is before the United States came into the war. So let me just take a sip of water here real quick, and we'll get started. Okay. To the Last Man. 3 Lufberry. 99 Lufberries. Near Bar-du-Lac, France, May 24th, 1916. The ride had been typical misery. The old French bus seeming to roll on wheels of iron, the flat bench seats no better. The bus was jammed with soldiers, and Lufberry was pressed against the window, could only stare out, another man's shoulder digging deep into his back. He suffered in silence, but the other passengers were a raucous group. He could tell from their talk and their youth that the men were new recruits. This bus, one of hundreds that bounced and rattled their way towards the fighting around Verdun. It had begun in mid-February 1916, a carefully constructed plan by the German High Command to break the year-long stalemate in the West by seizing the ancient French fortress, which I found out actually was more of a personal victory, like for morale, than it was for any strategic purposes. The capture of Verdun and the French defenses that surrounded it would strike a blow against a powerful position that stood squarely between the southern flanks of the German army and the open roadways to Paris. But Verdun's strategic importance was overshadowed by the symbolic meaning of the place, a defensive site that had defended the plains along the Meuse River since the time of the Romans. German planners knew well that the loss of Verdun would be catastrophic to French morale and could possibly cause the French government to lose their backbone for continuing the war. But as precise as the planning had been, the execution was marred by delays, bad weather, and bad timing. And when the German troops finally launched their assault, the French were aware of what was coming. Though the German push had obliterated the frontline French defenses, the fortress itself had been held by a valiant defense the Germans could not destroy. What the German High Command had predicted would be a quick and divisive blow stretched into month after month of futile attacks. The combined loss of men was staggering, more than 1 million casualties, an incomprehensible human disaster, the most costly battle in the history of war. Completely true. Verdun was an absolute hellhole, and I cannot imagine having been there. People talk about the Somme even the Somme was bad, but those who survived Verdun, man, they were venerated as saints. Lufberry had learned of this convoy of buses passing near the pilot training center, their route carrying the troops through the village of Bar-du-Lac, close to the airfield of Béthune. He had been given a seat only at the insistence of an officer at the airfield, the passengers grumbling as they made space for him, a narrow slot against the window, the worst seat on the bus. He didn't know their unit, didn't know if the men even knew each other at all, but they were sharing an adventure now, had passed the time with bawdy songs, bad voices, and guilty laughter, wearing the innocent smiles of young men who do not know yet what awaits them. When the song stopped, the talk began, and Lufberry could feel the men were energized by their nervousness. sharing their dreams for glory or the sweet stories of the romances they had left behind. As the stories passed through the crowd, he had stayed silent, had heard so much of this before. He passed the time inside his own mind, staring out the window, scanning the dull gray sky, searching for airplanes. But the boisterous talk had begun to exhaust itself, and finally they turned to him, this stranger with a different uniform. Lufberry saw the man on the bench in front of him, standing, facing him now. "What have you, poilu? Someone waiting for you, eh?" The name belonged to all of them, every man in the French army referring to himself and everyone else as poilu. Lufberry saw the young man's smile fading as he saw the age on Lufberry's face. "You're not one of us, eh?" "I'm no recruit, no." The man's eyes widened. "A veteran, then." The others seemed to savor the word, all faces looking to him now. The voices began to trample each other, but the questions were the same. "What have you seen? Where did you fight? Have you been to Verdun?" He let the questions pour over him, held up a hand, said, "Sorry, I'm not infantry, I'm a pilot." The words seemed to puzzle them, the man in front of them leaning close. "You fly aeroplanes?" The men laughed, the joke spreading through all of them. One man slapped him on the back, nearly jarring Lufberry's hat off his head. "A pilot? More like a dreamer. Tell me, poilu, have you seen the angels?" He did not understand their reaction, said, "I've been assigned to Escadrille Americaine at Bar-de-Luc." The man in front of him seemed genuinely curious now, waved a hand in the air, tried to quiet the others. "American? You don't sound like an American, poilu." Lufberry felt their innocence, their teasing coming only from their ignorance. These men were certainly those who had never seen an airplane or anyone who flew one. But if they were going to Verdun, they would learn much more. Every available flying squadron was relocating closer to the fighting, and the skies above the battlefields were already growing crowded. Bombers and observers, and now the fighter planes that would try to shoot them down. "I was born in France. My father was American." But the young man had no real interest in explanations, and the jokes began again. Birds and balloons, men calling out to the bus driver, a small man with dark skin. "Driver, take me to Bar-de-Luc as well. I wish to fly with the Hawks." The jokes faded away, and they were mostly ignoring him now. Lufberry felt the pressure in his back again, pushing him into the window. The bus was silent for a long moment. The men suddenly trapped by the thoughts of the journey, the destination, the fear energizing another round of noise, any distraction to wipe those thoughts away. The bus swerved, stopped abruptly, the man beside Lufberry leaning hard against him, crushing him. The curses began, every man shouting something obscene to the driver, who stood, faced them, his voice barely audible. "Bar-de-Luc!" Lufberry strained to stand, and the man beside him leaned away again, silence spreading through the bus. He moved toward the aisle. He said, "Permit me, I must get off here." The driver broke the silence. "Bar-de-Luc! Now!" Lufberry reached the front of the bus, saw angry impatience on the driver's face. He ignored the talk, the laughter around him, but they did not all laugh, and he saw some of them staring at him. Innocent curiosity. He was older than any of them by 10 years, and as he reached the door and he saw the freckled face of a boy, too young to be here, to wear the uniform. But the boy was looking up at him with genuine respect. "Good luck, sir." "Sir." He wanted to correct the young man. "Sir is for officers. I'm merely a corporal." "Good luck to you as well, poilu." Another man reached out, surprised Lufberry by taking his arm. "Sir, what is it like to fly?" Their honesty was in the young man's face, and Lufberry heard the angry voice of the driver. "Now! Hurry, I must go!" "I'm sorry, there's no time to explain. Perhaps you will fly one day." "I would be afraid. Why do you do it?" It was the one question Lufberry could answer, and he moved past the driver, stepped down the doorway, said, "To kill Germans." Lufberry had become qualified first in the bombers, had already served for more than 6 months with the French Escadrille 106, but he shared the ambitions of many who piloted the clumsy two-seaters and was able to persuade his commanding officer to send him to the fighter training field at Plessis-Belleville. It had been his first experience in the Nieuports, the petite biplane that was France's answer to the German single-wing Fokker Eindeckers. The Nieuports were the first fighter planes that could effectively compete with the Fokker, but what the French required most were capable pilots to fly them. It was not a skill that Lufberry came by naturally, and the training had been a struggle. Finally, in early May, he had earned his certificate and his new assignment. The American escadrille had been founded by a small group of pilots, aided by the energy and finances of several influential Americans in Paris. One of the most influential was Dr. Edmund Gross, a physician from California, who had established an American hospital in Paris, as well as organizing an American ambulance corps. The strict letter of American law made it illegal for an American to fight under the flag of another nation. And with the American government's insistence on a neutral status in the war, the men who volunteered for service to France were forced to walk a tightrope with the French government. Some had joined the French Foreign Legion, the catch-all for misfits and soldiers of fortune from all over the world. Still goes on, by the way. You can actually join it today. But several Americans have other ambitions. They wanted to fly. The meetings had begun, private affairs between Dr. Gross and French government officials, eager to find a way to bring much-needed American assistance to the French air service without setting off alarms in Washington, Paris, or Berlin. After lengthy and delicate discussions, the French ministers nervously rationalized that it was no violation of American law if the American participants had not been recruited in the United States. The loophole had been found, and Dr. Gross now began to assemble the first American unit to be officially allowed to fight for the French army. There were 7 men, most already familiar with flight training. Among them, Bill Thaw and Norman Prince were the sons of wealthy American financiers, the kind of men whose influence carried weight in the government ministries in Paris. Through their efforts, other Americans of great wealth were encouraged to contribute to the funding of the American escadrille, including men with the familiar names of Vanderbilt and Morgan. Despite the American government's official stance of neutrality, the American businessmen understood the economic value of the Allied cause. To the financiers, President Woodrow Wilson's policy of neutrality was a naive political mistake that might result in a German victory. Should the French and English lose the war, the cost of the financial interest of the United States would be catastrophic, since far more trade existed with those nations than with nations aligned with Germany. If this small group of American pilots were successful against the Germans, their exploits would inspire thousands more to take up the cause, putting pressure on Wilson to acknowledge America's crucial economic link to the Allies. Regardless of the political wrangling for the pilots, the American escadrille offered them the opportunity to fly as a single unit. The French government insisted that the Americans grant some concessions to soothe the continuing uneasiness in Paris about the direct participation of American fighting men, and so the escadrille would be designated as Escadrille N124, would be commanded by a French officer, would be part of a longer French air wing, and would take its orders from the French air service. To the pilots themselves, these are merely details. All they really needed were airplanes. Take a sip of water here. This is where it's going to get fun, because Lufberry is his. I remember his storyline actually being pretty amusing. Lufberry walked along the single-lane road. Could see a row of old buildings, barn-like structures, massive sheets of canvas for walls. He stepped out onto a large wooden bridge, crossed over a wide ditch, a trickle of muddy water flowing underneath. He was close to the soft-sided structures now, could see that out in front the ground was a flat, grassy plain, and beyond there were trees and low hills. He listened, expected to hear something of motors, heard only silence and the dull tramp of his boots on the hard, dusty road. He moved between 2 of the canvas buildings, heard voices now, French. He stepped out in front of the buildings, was surprised to see they weren't buildings at all. The front side of each canvas shelter was open, and he realized, of course, these are hangars. He walked out in front of one, empty and cavernous, saw a puddle of grease, the familiar debris of airplanes. He kept moving, followed the voices toward the great open maw of another hangar. He saw the men gathered in the center of the hangar surrounding a plane, a ragged Newport 11. They saw him now, one man pulling a pistol from his belt. "You, what are you doing here?" He held one hand in the air, eased the bag from his shoulder, let it drop to the ground. "I'm Corporal Raoul Lufberry. I have orders to report here. Is this the American escadrille?" He scanned the uniforms. 5 men, no officers, dirty hands and greasy shirts. One man stepped away from the plane, moved toward him, appraising. "Lufberry? They've been expecting you. I'm LeBlanc, chief mechanic. Welcome to the 124. The man was matter of fact, still appraising him, and Lufberry saw the pistol disappear. He looked at the plane now, ripped fabric, broken wing, struts, a pool of oil spreading beneath the motor. What happened to this one? LeBlanc backed away, waved him forward, said, "See for yourself. You've flown the fighters before?" Lufberry moved closer to the plane, could see more than rips in the cloth, saw small round holes punched through both wings down the side, the tail shredded, one side barely attached. "Bombers. I flew the Newports in training." Well, Corporal, this is something you didn't see in training. Shot to pieces this one. He was lucky to make it back. Damn Bosch bullet shattered his windscreen, busted up his face pretty bad. He'll be in hospital for a few days. Lufberry had memorized the names, the first 7 pilots of the American squadron. He was the 8th. He saw jagged glass in front of the cockpit, all that was left of the windscreen. Who, may I know? LeBlanc was down on one knee, running his hand beneath the motor housing. No hole, can't find the oil leak, we'll have to take her apart. Damn it! He looked up at Lufberry now, said, Corporal Rockwell. He made our first kill, you know. I had heard, yes. Made another one, too, but he couldn't get confirmation. The Bosch bastard made it back behind his own lines. Kiffin Rockwell's success had come just 4 days earlier, the first confirmed victory for the American squadron, and in Paris, the newspapers had already shouted the story. But the lack of confirmation was something all fighter squadrons had to contend with. Early in the war, pilots on both sides were claiming victories every time they flew, every puff of smoke from an enemy plane counting as a kill. Now, the victory had to be confirmed by another source, usually an infantry observation post, someone on the ground who had actually witnessed the enemy plane going down. Even if a pilot had watched his adversary crash, his word alone, or even the word of his fellow pilots, would not do. Lufberry moved close to the damaged Newport, ran his hand over the fabric, put a finger into one of the holes. Behind him, LeBlanc cursed, slid into the nose of the plane, stared up into the motor. Excuse us, Corporal, we have some work to do here. If I may ask, where are the pilots? Another man looked up from the far side of the plane and said, Flying. Where else might they be? At the tail, a man was taping the fabric. They've been out about an hour, he said, glancing at a watch. Should be another hour or so. Excuse me. LeBlanc was ignoring Lufberry now, said, Dent in the fuel tank, no hole though, no sign of a bullet hole in the cowling. Where the hell is the leak? Lufberry knelt down beside him and said, Mind if I have a look? With all respect, Corporal, I've never met a pilot yet who didn't just get in the way. You do your work and we'll do ours. We'll fix this bird if we have to go take the whole damn motor apart. Lufberry ignored the insult and said, I agree with you about pilots. Most of them won't get their hands dirty. However, I have considerable experience with motors. I was a mechanic before I was a pilot. That so? All right then, Corporal Mechanic. 5 of us can't find a hole in this damn motor. Maybe you can. We figure a fragment of a Bosch shell made its way in there somehow. The oil drained right out of her. How long did it take? LeBlanc looked up at him. A couple of days. The hell does that matter? Still has to be a hole. We came out here this morning to patch up the body and there was a puddle. Lufberry bent low, turned over on his back and slid himself beside LeBlanc. He reached up, closed his eyes, worked his fingers up and around, felt his way through the motor's shell. Well, Corporal, where's the hole? Lufberry eased his hand out the motor, slid out from under the plane. He saw a rag, wiped his hand, said, There isn't one. There were low laughs. LeBlanc emerging from beneath the plane. Feel free to assist us again, Corporal, any time. The oil isn't leaking from a hole. The motor's been jarred. The gasket seals have been cracked. LeBlanc looked at the others, then at Lufberry, said, Cracked? Corporal, every one of us to check the bolts. That motor's sealed up tight as a drum. No, actually, it isn't. Each cylinder has been jarred. He looked at the prop now, one blade with a long, thin gash. There. The imbalance on the prop caused the motor to jar, to shake just enough that it cracked the gaskets. The bolts are tight, but the oil is seeping right through the gaskets. That's why it took 2 days to make a puddle. You'll still have to pull the cylinders, you'll have to pull the cylinders, put new gaskets in. They stared at him in silence, and he wiped his hands again with the rag, said, I should find my quarters. Are the pilots billeted here? LeBlanc pulled himself up now, said, no, there's a chateau on the way to the village, number 45. A short walk. Lieutenant Delage should be here. He's the second in command. Do you need help with your baggage? Lufberry moved towards the bag, hoisted it up on his shoulder, said, No, I'll find it, thank you. He walked out toward the open field, stopped, thought for a moment, then turned, saw the mechanic still watching him. I do not wish to offend you, but if it is acceptable to you, I should like to assist with the preparation of any airplane that I fly. LeBlanc shrugged his shoulders, said, By all means, Corporal. Thank you. Lufberry turned again, moved out into the gray sunlight, pulled his bag up higher on his shoulder. He rounded the corner of the hangar, moved back towards the one-lane road, could hear the talk again, the brusque voice of LeBlanc. All right, let's pull these cylinders. I believe it's the gaskets. Lufberry could not help but smile. All right, I'm going to wrap that up today. Well, we'll get a little further into Lufberry's story, and we'll see where the next chapter takes us. Maybe we'll stick with him. Maybe we'll get to Baron von Richthofen. I don't know. We will find out. But thank you all so much for watching. Thanks, y'all, for those of you who stopped by. Appreciate it. Have a good night.